So, Morna,
Yeah.
I turn it over to you to start. And
Okay. So I would like to start. Stan and I have had an opportunity to make a presentation similar to this several times, including way up in Sápmi in northern Norway and around these parts as well. So we have a PowerPoint. I'll start the PowerPoint, and then I'd like to share some things with you as by way of introduction. So may I share my screen? Let's see. Oh, share. Let's see, where's the, hang on, I'm having technical difficulties today. I will get there. Slideshow. There, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Our presentation we're entitling Social Work Across the 49th Parallel, Big Salmon River and the Columbia River Treaty Modernization, Understanding Challenges to Environmental and Social Justice through Field Courses. Now, Stan and I are both teachers and educators, and so we have worked together on this idea of social work across the 49th parallel for about 15 years or so now. Right, Stan?
That's right. We've all grown older together.
And so, several years ago, the Columbia River Treaty Modernization sort of came into our awareness, and we've since brought it in as a focus for field courses that we've been doing. And so this presentation is a very introductory level to sort of bring up some of the ideas around the treaty and modernizing it, and some of the places and peoples we've had the privilege to engage with over the last about 8 or 9 years. So Stan and I have also done many presentations together, and our usual habit is to go into a room and rearrange the furniture, place chairs in a circle, do an exercise or two, and then have a conversation, all in person. But here we are on Zoom, and quite used to it now, and at least it's simpler to get a far-flung group together. So that's one of the good things about this electronic engagement. At any rate, and what I would like to say next is an adaptation of a short statement I wrote to the chief negotiators of the Columbia River Treaty, one Canadian and one American. I've been interested in the Columbia River Treaty for several years and have organized 2 field courses, which are experiential, place-based study tours that allow for embodiment of learning about this mighty river, visiting sites and meeting people along the river in Washington and British Columbia. After my first trip up the river, I had a profound experience of the river as a living entity. On the second one, I gained new understandings of the relationships between time, ethics, and place. While the past and present are important, we must also have an ethical loyalty to the future. Ethics matters in all our pursuits. The Columbia River Treaty is about a specific place. And to quote one of our field course hosts, Dr. Jeanette Armstrong, SEALX leader and scholar, humans, unlike other life forms, unless they live an ethic that protects continuing regeneration of the life force of a place, become destroyers of that life force. At present, Canada and the United States are engaged in a very complex negotiation between nation states to modernize the Columbia River Treaty. Many voices are asking to be recognized and accommodated. Those focused on hydropower, flood control, irrigation, navigation, entitlements, ecosystems, all for important reasons. However, at 3 formal and several informal trips along the river, I would like to suggest that listening to and incorporating the expertise, environmental, economic, scientific, political, cultural, spiritual, of the people with place-based experience of stewardship of the river for over 10,000 years since time immemorial is vital to analyzing the present. Blending these 10,000 years of indigenous experience with modern technologies will inform how to develop adaptive agreements for a workable, healthy, modern Columbia River Treaty, a treaty that recognizes the future of the river in all its systems. I think there's no better way to understand the complexities and vitality of the river than to place oneself with humility and respect along the river and truly listen to the experts. It is in the spirit of striving for ethical engagement that we developed the field courses.
Okay, so we're going to start with a poem that was written by one of the participants on one of our field courses. But before we do that, I also want to acknowledge with us is Dr. Mary Tucci Baker, who is an Indigenous scholar and situated at the University of Western Washington in Bellingham, and has been on these trips with us, and has been a mentor and an educator, and will also, I'm sure, be participating when she can, even though I know she's not feeling very well today. But I just wanted to acknowledge that she has been a vital contributor and one of the originators of this particular iteration. All right, the Coyote revisits the Columbia. The great river he once knew, wild, majestic, compelling, transformed, reduced to a series of placid, controlled false lakes. The ones he led upstream long ago, abundant, free-roaming, life-giving, exiled, imprisoned by repetitive, towering, sterile concrete walls. The people who proudly honored him, vibrant, spiritual, whole, obscured, marginalized by the disregard of foreign politics and economies. The richly named riverine landscape, iconic, memorable, storied, muted, erased by immense suffocating tombs of water. The fabled dog, himself wise, intrepid, capable, disoriented, stunned by the unimaginable cruelty of an alien trickster. So I think this sets the tone, I think, for trying to understand our journey along the river and trying to understand the people, the economies, and the cultures that live along this river as we go along it, and as we're going to certainly be taking you along it. Thank you. Morna?
Yeah, so a brief history. I'm sure amongst us today are people with deep knowledge of the Columbia River Treaty, but it was a very sort of a brief analysis of it. So it was signed by the nation states, Canada and the US in 1964, and it only includes hydropower and flood control. I'm sorry, I just got a message, so I get distracted by the messages. So during the negotiations for the treaty in the late 1950s, the United States government asked the Canadian government if there was if Indigenous people should be included, and what about Indigenous fishing rights and things. And the Canadian government said, "Oh no, there's no commercial value in Indigenous fishing. We don't need to worry about that." So that was definitely the very beginning of the treaty, that there was no consultation or including of Indigenous people of the region at all. So in 2010, after the even more difficult results that these treaties dams made on the area, 32 tribes, 17 Canadian, 15 US, came together. And their goal was to get the agreement of the US government to consider ecosystems functions, and as part of the renewal of the treaty, and also to seek representation on the negotiating teams, both in Canada and the US, and to assist in the treaty review, which was an official period. The Columbia River Treaty has no official ending, but as of 2014, which was that 60 years or 50 years? It's 60 years after the treaty was signed. then either Canada or the US could start a process to renegotiate what it would have in it. So March 20th of 2020, a year ago, the 9th round of negotiations ended. And on the US officials, the Department of State website about the negotiations, there's a quote that says, "The United States seeks to achieve a modernized treaty regime that will ensure the effective management of flood risk, provide a reliable economic power supply, and improve the ecosystem." So that's become, the ecosystem improvement has become part of the negotiation. And in the round a year ago, which is the last round that I could find, they're quite secretive about when they meet, that the US delegation included expert advisors from the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation, the Kootenai Tribe of Idaho, and the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation. The people didn't have a seat at the table, but they were outside the room as advisors. And the Canadians actually invited Indigenous folks to be part of the advices as well, but much later than the US. So, Stan, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so at the bottom, we talk about the sacred responsibility. The tribes that have been involved with this on both sides of the border talk about this stewardship of the river being a sacred responsibility. And we'll be looking at some slides of the first salmon ceremonies that were conducted since time immemorial, as they often say. And what it does is it connects the followers to the land and cultural practices by their ancestors. These were real systems of governance and reflect not just laws and legal codes, as these treaties are trying to encompass, but a system of decision-making guided by values and beliefs of a culture. Caring for salmon, the river, and other British Columbia Basin resources was not just a system of governance, but was considered a sacred obligation. So the cultural and spiritual identities of tribes and First Nations, albeit with variations across the 49th and even between, have always been and continue to be sustained through deliberate stewardship and use of the land and water. And this has always been a guiding principle in terms of this sacred responsibility. Thanks, Morna.
Okay, so I just have to say something from a formal perspective. These field courses are hosted by the Pacific Northwest Canadian Studies Consortium, which is housed at the University of Washington Canadian Studies Center. And it's a consortium of academic and governmental institutions in this whole area: Alaska, Yukon, Northwest Territories, BC, Alberta, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and recently Berkeley asked to join us, and so California as well. So we have some funding, very minimal, to do these field courses, and we're trying to do them about approximately every third year. We were hoping very much to do one this summer, but I think we're having a pandemic delay, and we'll try and do one next year. So we invite people from this entire area to join us, and if you're interested, please do get in touch. So the last several have been focused on the Columbia River as one of the primary economic, social, political, environmental, cultural, spiritual, geographic beings of the region. We've gone 10 days along the river in vans, and it's been a great experience. So we would like to just play a couple of clips for you. Oh no, is this not going to? Oh yeah, there, good. This is a sort of a foundation of an ethics matter from a ethics conference, water ethics conference, a few years back.
One River Ethics this matter.
Welcome to the homeland of the Spokane tribe. You know, it was this time of year we made plans to get together and set up our camps and get ready for the big salmon coming back home. Because that's what it was. This was home for them. The awe of salmon. The awe of salmon. Talk about a miracle of modern life. It's incredible. Wonder, wonder of wonders.
We may have got pushed out of Canada. We may have got pushed out of Coulee Dam. We may have got pushed out of Lower HOM. Still by the river. Learning, connecting, understanding, education and outreach are going to be the keys to reconnecting us back to our places and our people's bones.
Have we, as a dominant culture, maybe at times a domineering culture, said to our native peoples, will you forgive us? Have we done that? I don't think we have. We are the descendants, whether literal or social, of those who conceived Columbia and Snake River dams or built them, of those who created the treaty. And almost certainly every one of us has been a
Okay,
beneficiary
have fun.
way.
Say hi to Stuart.
Goods those dams brought, and they have brought goods. I think of Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. He asked questions like, what have we done? What are our acts doing to ourselves and to our desired view of ourselves as good people, as moral people, as good neighbors?
So if you want to think about miracles and what it means to you, it's really about what's possible and the intention that you have to contribute in our communities and in our nation, in our respective nations.
Passage, ecosystem function. They're not just tribal issues. They don't just benefit the tribes. They'll benefit all of us. Now that paradigm shift where instead of waiting until things are in bad shape to work on, we take advantage of this opportunity now. And I'm very optimistic with meetings like this today that working together we can make that happen for our future generations. That's what we're here for.
So, it's my turn, right, Stan?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, just sort of a brief geographic sort of picture of the Columbia River Basin. It's about the size of France or Texas, and in Canada, it's in British Columbia, and in south of the border, it's in Washington, Montana, Idaho, a little bit in Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. And on the right is the map of both, combined map of both of the trips that we did. So the river itself, headwaters are up in British Columbia, right up in here, about 300 miles north of the U.S. border. And the river flows north, and then it winds in a southerly direction and round and until just south of the Tri-Cities in Washington State, where it heads west and is the Oregon-Washington border. Some see the shape of the basin as a lung, the source of breath in our region. A natural river breathes with the seasons. A big inhale during the spring melts, an exhale in the summer, an inhale again when the rain falls, and when the fall rains, and an exhale again in the winter. And dams, there are more than 60 on the Columbia watershed, the latest 4 of which are treaty dams based on the Columbia River Treaty, were made for hydroelectric production, navigation, and flood control. The flood control was in because of a tragic flood that wiped out Vanport, Oregon, which was built as temporary housing on the floodplain near Portland, Oregon, for World War II defense production. At its height, Vanport had 40,000 residents. 40% or were African American who had migrated from the South to work in the war efforts. And after the war, the white population found housing in Portland, but the Black population had nowhere to go due to redlining. Blacks were only allowed to live in the Albina district, which was full. And in 1948, there was a big flood and 15 people perished and 17,500 became homeless overnight, almost entirely African American migrants. So this was the justification for saying that the treaty was about flood control. It's another whole long complicated thing, but there are people who argue that if you look at hydrology, there's no way that that these dams where the treaty dams were placed could have anything to do that far down the river in Portland. So the other dams were built in because electrical production was on electrical production was on the rise in the 1930s, and water is an efficient way to store electricity. So the Grand Coulee Dam was built for hydropower and irrigation. But with the advent of World War II, the irrigation was never completed. Another long story. And the focus was on electric power to produce the war effort in the area, particularly for aluminum smelting to help with building airplanes at Boeing. So right after World War II, try to figure out how to, when there's even more demand for electricity, so how do we regulate the flow of the river to provide for consistent year-round electric production rather than in the breath during the seasons? And so Canada actually holds the main cards because 40% of the river is actually in Canada. And by building 4 treaty dams, 3 in British Columbia and 1 in Montana, and agreeing to a bilateral commission that determines how much water is released in Canada to provide for US power production, and by extension, consistent irrigation in the summer months for the wheat and apples and potatoes and onions, the big agribusiness that developed in the 50s and 60s. Canada is then paid in electricity called the Canadian entitlement. So the biggest of these dams is the Grand Coulee Dam. And the Grand Coulee Dam has 12 million cubic feet of concrete, enough to build a 4-foot sidewalk that would go twice around the equator. And it produces enough electricity that could serve over 4 million households each year. And this is a picture of one of the participants as we were getting close to the Grand Coulee Dam, and she's sitting up high, and just to show this picture, you can really see how where the natural riverbank would be, or the highest part is, and then it's the sort of this no riparian zone. It's not a natural river here at all that we're looking at. And this little guy, I don't know if you can see my pointer, is a large raptor. So we're very, very high above the river at this point, and the raptor is flying below us. So there you go. Stan, are you going to talk about the Mica Dam?
Right. So now the Mica Dam is the last dam that was built, and this was built in 1973. And this is literally at the end of a highway in British Columbia. And we actually traveled up here, and the participants, including students and people from a variety of different disciplines, were able to see the actual the significance and the mightiness of these dams. We actually went inside one of the dams earlier in the US and were given a tour of it. And many people had never been inside a dam. And if you look at this picture, you see what the dams have done to the environment and the stilling of the waters. And if you look on the right-hand side, all that water that now has been stilled has also become recreational property, but this is not what the original area looked like. And it has, obviously affected the environment in detrimental ways that we are only beginning to understand. And part of our journey was to begin to talk with people along the river about these maleffects, if you will, these negative things that have happened as a result of constructing these huge power-giving facilities.
So, oh yes, go ahead, Sam.
Go ahead. No, continue.
So, so this is also just above the Mica Dam, and off to one side there was this wonderful waterfall, this absolutely lively natural water that one of our young and agile participants went up and filled all our water bottles, and we had delicious water to drink. And on the left, you see what was the forest, and the sort of the death of this riparian zone, and where sacred burial grounds are drowned and washed away. This is 275 miles north of the border. And recently, Stan and I were involved in a discussion of environmental justice, and the racist ways in which cities are planned and constructed was a topic. And while we were talking, I sort of had this idea. So that while there's much focus on salmon and in the obstruction of spiritual burial sites, land, a treasured social agent, and food security, salmon, camas bulbs, etc., we talk a lot about all these things in terms of the river and the effects that these dams have had on it. Calling out the construction of dams as a racist practice, I think, needs to be louder. And so I looked a little bit, and Arundhati Roy is a novelist and an activist engaged in defining dams as racist in India, where dams have had many, many unintended consequences for farmers and people who have lived on the land in India for millennia. And another place where dams have been huge in recent years was China. And damming the Yangtze River erased traditional villages, history, art. And China's not my area of expertise at all, but it's apparent the hierarchies of power that definitely play a role, including the urban-rural divide. And so the dams along the Columbia River are all in rural settings, affecting First Nations, Native American, and settler communities through a lack of recognition of the land occupancy and title. When institutional racism leaves out environmental racism, access to natural resources, including food security, is denied and leads to extreme poverty, political, social, physical, spiritual.
And now this slide actually is a very interesting slide, because this really speaks to the changes that have occurred. So if you look at this slide, there is a slide taken at the Grand Coulee Dam in 1942, and you see Native American First Nations peoples gathered around there, and this was the ceremony of tears as they were watching their food source and their river being taken over by this massive structure. And they've been ceremonies, and I talked earlier about this responsibility that Indigenous communities have led us to in terms of thinking about the environment. And they were always ceremonies to honor the salmon and to honor the river for giving life. And those have not discontinued. In fact, they're very much alive, as you can see on the left-hand side, this poster where in Kettle Falls and Castlegar, they were these gatherings, and you see on the right-hand side where they are very prominent. And as part of our journey, we were able to participate in these ceremonies where Indigenous people, their sacred ceremonies, were calling back the salmon. And there have been different ways now of trying to allow salmon to actually cross over these dams. And I think Morna will be talking about those, but it's very much a sacred responsibility, and it speaks to the journey and the painful efforts that have been made to literally destroy the environment, but also destroy a whole way of life. But it is not ending there. It's very hopeful, because as you can see, there are people and communities that are willing to teach us how to rethink about this. And that's what we're interested in learning.
So here is some pictures of Kettle Falls, which is a big natural traditional fish gathering spot along the river. And on the left is a picture of it in from a drawing in 1859, and you can see the movement of the river and the liveliness of it. And on the right is the placid river that's there now. And if you look, you can see the same hill. Here's the same hill here and over here. And this rock is still very prominent. It was a rock on which people sharpened their instruments. And the second time we were through in Kettle Falls, I sort of had an aha moment that it's sort of time to sit down, shut up, and listen. I tell you where that came from back in my history, but we don't have time to right now. And that it's time to sort of flip the script, and the more the settlers listen to the expertise of Indigenous peoples and place ourselves as allies in movements rather than Indigenous movements, rather than the nation state gesture of including Indigenous people in nation state projects, but participating actively and taking a backseat and truly being accomplices in movements. I think it's what we're trying to learn and work through. And then another little point that another place that we have visited is the Okanagan Nation Fish Hatchery, and also the United Colville Tribes Fish Hatchery at Chief Joseph Dam. And this to me is a sort of a real demonstration of sort of the traditional knowledge of salmon's traditional knowledge mixed with high-tech materials and in order to regenerate the salmon population. And I've heard that, and there's an NPR report actually that the summer of 2019, tribes actually trucked salmon above both the Chief Joseph and the Grand Coulee Dams for the first time in 80 years, and released them above the dams, which is just very exciting and hopeful. Another thing that I've sort of been learning about and think is very, very compelling is a global movement that is bestowing rivers with personhood. In 2017, the Wanganui River in New Zealand, a living ancestor of the Maori, was granted personhood and with all the legal rights of personhood in the nation state of New Zealand. In 2017, the Ganges and the Yamuna River in India received legal personhood with human representatives. And in 2019, Bangladesh, which is often known as the country of rivers, proclaimed all rivers, of which there are hundreds, have legal rights of persons. As they say, the river is our mother. And I think that this great being, the Columbia Big Salmon, Big Water, deserves such a status.
So, this slide is entitled Implications for Social Work, because our course was really designed to try and attract social workers, and I want to expand that now, of course, to the faith community, and we're very grateful that you are here with us thinking about this, particularly in terms of allyship and accomplice work, but also how can we engage? We have students who are very interested, and each one of you have sites, and Jonathan is actually going to be taking one of our students. Elise had one of our students, and if you're interested in working with us in this area, that would obviously be very important. For social work, of course, it's international policy. It's an opportunity to understand how a river that transcends the border, and of course, for Native Americans, First Nations, Indigenous people, these borders are artificial. They've been created. So how do we have social work students and others who are interested in this work from other disciplines understand what this means? And then linking ecological values with spiritual values, because they obviously are very closely connected, as Deacon Nahaney spoke about, and I'm sure we'll be talking more, as well as Jeff and hopefully others, about all of this. And how do we learn more about community organizing and this allyship and accomplice work? I'm looking forward to hearing from Morna about the questions that are being raised, because as I said, I've got to hop off and go to an admissions committee, but I'm sorry that, that I have to do that, but I am very excited about this work, and I'm hoping that we can form some kind of collaboration with all of you to continue this work. So thank you for your time.
And I would like to, in the implications for social work, share a quote from a reflection that Karen Katigbek, she's a Master of Social Work, and was one of the participants on one of the trips. The way she expressed it, she said, "The Columbia River Treaty course helped me think about pre-work and action steps needed for our practice. In my reflections, the course has shown me the importance of removing the internalized dams within ourselves to flow freely and wildly again. First, by recognition of our privilege and power. Second, by opening ourselves up to different fields, cultures, and ways of thinking. Third, asking how to facilitate healing. And finally, how can we move as an accomplice with oppressed communities?" And just to finish up, I'd love to, some of you may have seen Treaty Talks. I'd love to play the trailer for Treaty Talks. So I'd just like to thank for support and cooperation. The Canada Center at the Jackson School for International Studies, University of Washington, has been a stalwart supporter of this project in many ways. The University of British Columbia granted us a collaborative research grant and to bring research to people all around this area. The University of British Columbia, Okanagan, we have an ongoing relationship with many people there. And the Naukan Center of the Okanagan Nation Alliance has been also very helpful and generous with us. And of course, all the field participants and hosts. Couldn't do it without you all. So I believe we would love to hear from Deacon Nahaney and Jeff some comments. And I know Elise also asked if we would sort of talk about action steps, since it's Faith Action Network. So so may I turn it over for some commentary from Deacon Nahaney and Jeff?
Morna, could you stop the sharing of your screen so we can all see each other now?
Absolutely. Hang on. Let me see how I figure out how to do that, since I seem to be having some disabilities today. Where am I? Nope, that didn't do it.
Aren't you on some island someplace or something?
Yeah, I am on an island somewhere or other. I can't even see myself anymore.
Stop
Why don't-
share at the top. There should be a stop share button at the top of your screen.
Okay. Yes, yes. Thank you. Well, there was. Now it's gone again. So there is share screen.
No, that's
That's
because you
good.
stopped sharing the screen, so that's why the button's
We're
gone.
good.
Oh,
You got it.
okay. It's been a bit of time. Alrighty.
Hey, thank you. Yes, I'm really happy about the work that you're doing with the Columbia River. And it has repercussions for all the rivers across North America. Let me give you an example. We rely on fish from the Fraser River. It's a muddy river. But for the past 3 or 4 years, the water temperature in the river is too warm and the salmon will not go up to spawn. That is a problem. It's a big river too, and I don't know why the temperature rises or what causes that. The other thing is where I live in North Vancouver in the Squamish Nation Reserve, there's a group called Stream Keepers. They've cleaned up a small river beside the railroad track and comes down from a park near the Capilano Dam. And they want to set up on the reserve a fish counting station and probably something for taking the temperature of the water. So when that becomes available, I'll be volunteering for that because I want to become involved. I want to learn more about salmon and what they do, and be part of it, of saving something. My brother on the Squamish River, which is another huge river, that the water comes from the mountains, and so the water temperature is very cold, and the salmon are always going up there. He's going to ask somebody to get some fish, and he's going to teach us how to clean them and fillet them, to smoke them. These are things that we pass on to our people. But I think that the main thing in dams and rivers is that people become involved in doing some volunteer work with some projects that teach them about taking care of the river. Because I think that when they learn these things, even with Indigenous people paddling up the river or cooking salmon the traditional way, they will learn something and some values that will be with them for life, and that they can claim the river as a something that's worth saving. Thank you.
Thank you, Deacon. So as I was being with the presentation today, I was reminded, and I'm sure we all were, how there's such an interconnection between the environment of the Salish Sea, the Pacific Ocean, and the rivers, especially the Columbia River in this region. And so the damage on the Columbia River affects us in the Salish Sea area because we have less salmon and there's less things coming back to our habitat. So it's really, we all benefit when we take better care of our environments. And I know that the efforts to take down dams that are blocking salmon passage, that those are gaining momentum, and that the interests that want to keep those dams, they're losing ground because their need for those dams is diminished. So I encourage us all, I guess, like with Faith Action Network, I really appreciate that it's the action aspect of FAN. And so please be aware of what you can do to help protect and develop our shared environment. So be educated about what's going on with the dams, and the Upper Snake River dams are, of course, there's a big question about those, and we know now that taking down dams it's basically necessary. People take it on like, oh, used to take it on like, oh, well, no, it's too expensive and stuff. Well, it has to be done for many dams. So the dams are not made to last forever. So even though we have come to see them that way, because most of us have been there all our lives. So thank you for letting me share a little.
Thank you. Elise, do you want to
Sure. If that's all for your presentation, we can open it up for questions. I know one person who's already asked to speak into the space. We have a guest who's a high school student who wants to speak. So Anushka, I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I'm going to monitor the chat for other questions.
Awesome, thank you. So yeah, like she said, I'm a high schooler. Hello everyone, my name is Anushka. I'm really interested in helping Indigenous communities, as I'm sure we all are here. And I know you guys are working on a lot of interesting projects. So I just wanted to come here because I would love to connect with all of you and learn more about ways that I can get involved. And at my level, I'm trying to enact land acknowledgements into schools because we don't do them at schools, and I really feel like we should. So I've also started a petition to do that, and I would really appreciate your guys' help if you could help, spread the word, sign it, and I really hope that we can hopefully pass a law or something like this so that all schools do that, because I think it's really important. So yeah, I'd just love to hear from you guys, ways that I can get involved and any thoughts you might have, and I will put the link in the chat if you're interested.
Can you say where you are and what got you both interested in this and what resources you used for learning about the initiative, honoring native land initiative?
Sure. Yeah, so I live in like the Sammamish Issaquah area, and I got interested because I watched like a documentary about kind of like the history of like, it was about like a boy and his experiences on a reservation. It was a Lakota reservation, and it really struck me, he had, there was so much poverty there, and there was like lack of resources, and that really just shocked me because I had no idea about that before. And so since then, I've really been trying to learn more. I actually currently do a podcast where I talk to Indigenous people and I try to learn about their experiences, and I've learned so much from talking to Indigenous people. So yeah, I'm just trying to get involved as much as I can.
Bravo.
Thank you, Anushka. We'd love to see those links in the chat and follow your podcast. That's awesome. Thank you for your leadership. I see a question that, Genjo, would you like to speak that into the space, or would you like me to say it? I'll give you a chance to.
Okay, I really enjoyed that last video with people paddling up the river. Could you, whoever put that up, could you tell us more about that paddle experience? Who was on it? How was it organized? When was it? Are there going to be more?
Sure. It was in 2015, and it was two friends who worked together, and children along the river built the canoes and went on up the river. And if you, it's available on Vimeo if you want to watch the full film. It's called Treaty Talks, and that probably is a good way of explaining, since we're running out of time. But yeah, it's a wonderful film. If you have a difficult time getting it, anybody's welcome to email me. I don't know how do you do the chat? That's I'm a little bit anyway. I'll just speak out my email address. It's McMorna, McMorna @uw.edu.
I got the link, and I'll be able to watch it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And I see that you put up a bunch of links, and yeah, and I agree. The 8th annual One River Ethics Matter conference is a really going to be wonderful. And I didn't know that there was a date for it. So
that's those are links shared by Graham Lee Rowlands. Would you like to share something verbally with us, Graham?
I can say hello quickly. Thanks for having me. This is a great event. Really excited to hear about all the work you've been doing over these past years. And I've just tried to share a few links related to some current and upcoming things related to what has been discussed today. And thanks for what you do. And maybe we can collaborate somewhere down the line.
absolutely. Do you do the youth field courses? Are you the person who has done those?
The ones in British Columbia, yes.
Yep.
I'm one of the people.
Okay, that's what I thought. Nice to meet you.
Anushka, I put my contact information on there. If you want to contact me, just give me a call perhaps or email me, and other people also. You can check that out and see if you want, in case you want to be in touch with me. Thanks.
I will definitely check that out. Thank you.
Deb Cruz, is there something you wanted to share through your different campaigns that you're working on?
Which one? We have just started recently working with, and Gary's part of this, several tribal members. We were talking initially about the Snake River, and then we had a friend from Lummi talking about Nooksack River, which all led us into a discussion of the various different initiatives that Morna started talking about, is the personhood of different rivers and resources. And I hate to use the word resources, but gifts that we have. So we're working right now with tribal members on developing a rights of nature series of resolutions that hopefully there was some discussion that they could take to the May conference of the affiliated tribes of Northwest Indians and start a movement from within the tribes going forward to take a look at their areas, and then at a grander level. And at the same time, while they're doing that, I'm going to be coming back to you guys to do a parallel movement that will help support the tribes in this effort. So that's one of them. And then we do have an upcoming totem pole journey to Snake River. Jewel James is planning on a totem pole that will go up for the Snake River. And there's also the Netzimat movement, which is going to be coming out and is going to be talking a little bit about the rights of the Salish Sea. So we're working with Earth Law Center, who is focused a lot on this and has done a lot of work with the tribes. And we will be bringing in our non-Indigenous partners a little bit later on down the line to help propel this whole thing forward.
Deb, can you say who you are and what area you're from and denomination, and put some contact info in the chat since you're not named?
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was on that call. Okay, my name is Deb Cruz and I'm with Justice Washington. That's JUU. It's a Unitarian Universalist State Action Network. And I'm also with the Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship up here in Lummi and Nooksack territory.
Others. I've lost track of people's hands are raised, but go ahead and I see a hand, Joe Blair.
Hi, Joe. You're muted, dear.
Yeah, you're going to hear some little voices in the background. I'm in Port Townsend, Washington, and I'm a member of Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship and the Native Connections Action Group. And it just so happens I really never put two and two together on this, but I have my bachelor's in sociology from Temple University, and my co-conspirator, co-facilitator for Native Connections, has her master's from Berkeley in sociology. So I just can't imagine what drew us to this work, you know, after careers and other things. And so the idea of the river being a living thing was really driven home to me in the One River conference in December. And so for people who want to be imbued in a whole day of thinking that way, I suggest that you register for that next year. Every year, a different tribe talks about their culture and their relationship to the river. And it's very spiritual. And I think that it really has guided me in the way I think about things. And then another thing in this work is that if you just start showing up, people will start to say, well, there she is again, or there they are again, you know, and then pretty soon after you've been to different events, you're just one of the group. There's a very accepting, and one of the best field trips I've ever been on was going to the Lower Snake River, staying near the Lower Granite Dam. There's a campground there, and they rent rooms, and they also, you know, you can also camp. And then getting up early in the morning and going on a tour of that dam. This is one of the ones they want to breach, and seeing how easy it would be to breach it and how obsolete it is. All the turbines in there are really old, and it'll cost millions of dollars to replace them. And then we left that and went up to the location where they had the flotilla, and we participated in a flotilla. You don't have to have your own kayak. People will say, get in with us, you know, and it's just, there's ceremony the whole time. And again, you meet all the people who are really involved in this. So that's my 2 cents.
Before we move into other things, I just want to make sure there's not another question for Morna or Deacon Rennie or Jeff Smith as presenters.
I have something to add if there are no questions about the Snake River dams, which is a big and urgent issue to save the salmon, steelhead, and other fish of the Snake River. There is quite a collaborative movement afoot to support Mike Simpson's plan. He's a representative from Idaho who has a $33 billion plan. One of the only problems with it is that it won't be implemented till 2030. So there are a number of efforts being made to urge our federal elected and local and state officials to get behind immediate implementation of this plan. The Columbia and, I forget the name of the plan. But I'm happy to put the links for the petitions in the chat, and invite you to follow up on Mr. Simpson's plan, which can be found on his website, and I'll put that in the chat as well.
Investigate a little deeply on that because part of the conditions of the package includes a moratorium on the breaching of other dams. So you may want to take a look at that pretty closely and see what those moratoriums, where they are and what they involve.
And that is a significant trade-off to make this happen. However, as I understand, the tribes affected are certainly in favor of this action. But it's advisable, as Deb said, to be aware of this. Because, as you know, extinction is forever.
One of the things I appreciated about your presentation and what you raise in it is the interconnection of so many issues as an environmental justice moment and issue. So environmental, racial equity, the displacement of peoples, homelessness, livelihood, fishing, food. And I think the more that we take, you know, this river that runs through us and think about all those implications, the more people we can bring to act. I think that was just something that rose for me. The other thing I just wanted to say is we have a copy of Treaty Talks. If that is a follow-up, some people want to do, we could have a, I don't know how that goes on Zoom when you watch a video together, but we could watch something like that together. Other thoughts about follow-ups?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for including us, and please feel invited as we develop lists. Will there be a way, at least for us to have a list of people who participated today, that as we start a list of people to keep informed about our next field course? Because I think the more diverse people who are, you know, joining together to do these field courses, the more work we can do.
We certainly can share. If you don't want your name shared with Stan and Morna, let us know. Otherwise, we can share a list of who attended. We also made a recording just so that they would have something at least to look back as they're making this presentation. We don't need to post it anywhere, but if it's okay, we would share it with some people. If it's not, please let me know.
Hi, this is Jeff, and I had a comment following up on what you just said, Elise. Seems like, you know, rivers are a really good area like to focus on organizing because they touch so many issues. So many organizations who have interests in their different silos could work together. Like if you save the river, then you address so many kinds of issues, really important issues, human rights and environmental, for instance. And that reminds me a little bit of when the Standing Rock situation was going on, when the encampment was there. I was really impressed by how having a clear focus like that to stop the pipeline brought in so many people with who have a different focus on what they're trying to accomplish in the world. So like environmentalists and human rights and cultural rights and treaty rights came together in a really powerful way. So that's what it makes me think of. In the rivers, that is a huge organizing entity.
Thank you, for sure.
I would like to, as one of the next steps, to reach out to the new Interior Secretary, Representative Deb Haaland. I think it's a district of New Mexico, as an Indigenous person heading one of the biggest organization in the United States. to reach out to her and talk about the work you're doing and work with Indigenous people and put some feelers out there and find some thoughts on what she thinks you're doing or we're doing.
Thank you. That's a wonderful idea, Deacon Mahaney.
I just had a quick question, if you don't mind. So I know you mentioned like some work you're doing with the Columbia River Treaty. So is there a way that people can volunteer or get involved? Can you share more about how you can do that? Because I would definitely be really interested.
Yes, I'm sure there are many ways. I've been involved in it from a university education perspective. So let's have an exchange. Let's have an email exchange, and that would probably be the best way to find good places for you. Where are you located?
I'm in like the greater Seattle area. So I mean, yeah.
Okay, great. So let's get in touch by email, and that would be fantastic. We'll find the right spot. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
Great. Thank you so much.
You see her email. Morna's email is in the chat, and we can share that when we follow up.
Great.
Any words from other INIC regulars? We gather every other month, and there are many groups like this, right? Nakani has a group that gathers, and from Gary, I think you told me about a new group that I'd never heard of that gathers to discuss, where do our faith traditions and Indigenous peoples, what's the history that we need to unlearn? What's the coming, face to face with the doctrine of discovery, which Jonathan Neufeld and where's Jonathan Rosenberg? Is he still on here? I mean, a lot of you do that work. So doctrine of discovery, boarding school healing coalitions we've looked into, and our faith communities, very direct impact on those. We've sponsored films, we've taken some actions together, but a lot of it is coming together from our various traditions and just talking about what does our tradition need to do? What can we learn from what your tradition has done? And we love more people at the table and keep the table moving. And there's a group in Olympia, Learning Right Relations, that is on this list as well. And so this work is so important and being done in many different places. And it's just good to have this river, as Jeff said, this river that runs through so much of all of it. I will just say before we end that our next meeting is 2 months from now. We do the second Thursdays. So it's Thursday, May 13th at 1 o'clock. And if you registered and you want to receive notices, I can put you on that list and you'll get the notices. If you want to opt out, just let us know. We'll take you off the list.
One parting shot. In British Columbia, Nestle Corporation has been buying our water and turning it into a commodity, which it shouldn't be because the water should be free for everybody. And so they buy it at $1, I don't know if it's a gallon or a million liters, whatever it is. That's not right. Perhaps the Columbia River should become a person. Of course, on the other hand, Nestle Corporation is also a person. You have to be careful of those two things.
That's what we use for justification for if the corporations can have personhood, so can the rivers.
Yes, definitely. Water is life.
And knows no boundaries.
Yes. Thank you for the discussion, and thank you for all the people for being interested in essentially saving our planet for our grandchildren and those not even yet born. Thank you.
Anushka's got a link on there to sign a petition, and it is took me 2 seconds to do it. So if you click on it real quick before they shut down this call, you can just get it done like that. And I already got a thank you for doing it. So, man.
Great. We'll share those elements of the chat back with back to you.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting us, Elise, and thank you for everyone participating. And I know I can speak for Stan as well. We appreciate your help, and thank you, Jeff and Deacon Mahaney, for supporting us today.
Right. Be well, and thank you for all you do in all your different parts of this state and across the parallel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.